All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm recording this session. Today's Friday, um, February, February 24th, February 14th. Let me just admit and also welcome Jen as well. I'm super excited. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to this now. The weeks before, I'm like thinking it's next week. No, it's the following week. So I really appreciate that you guys are here and this is working out. And especially because we have had a few discombobulated weeks. And I think you can unmute yourself. No, anyhow. Uh, yeah, so we have had. Hi, Jen.
Hey.
Can you hear me and everything?
Yes,
Okay,
you
perfect.
look great. You look so sparkly and fresh.
Oh, I just combed my hair.
Looking good,
Took
my
a
friend.
shower. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, so I'm excited. Chloe just sent a message, and she has the flu. I think again, she's been sick, and she doesn't feel 100%, so she's not gonna join us for this one. But just wanted to welcome everyone else who's here. Hi, Claire and Darlene and Denise and Portia. So nice of you to join us, and then some other people will join us soon. I just sent a few reminders, and some people will just watch this after it's recorded. And I don't know how interesting that is, but um, yeah. So we're just recorded for about an hour and a half, and okay, no problem. Yeah. So uh, anyhow, I just posted. Let me just do this and start right away. Okay, here we go. I posted a few things. I sent a link in the email with images that I scanned from the book that we are using as reference. So most of the time, we just kind of like we always use photographic references, but in very rare occasions, we actually use a painting as a reference. And now that you're all here and we have congregated together, I should say that this is the most challenging reference. Painting off of a painting is 10 times more difficult. And it's not because it's more difficult per se, it's because there's a painting there. And if we have already doubts about our work when we use a photographic reference, um, when we use a painting as a reference, it's double the psychological tour de force, I would say. Oh, here's Dina. So I'm not trying to condition anyone, but I experienced this myself. But I'm gonna give as many tips and ways of like doing this as I can, and also to reframe it in a way that actually um, feels right. Because even though this is more challenging, so far Jen and I have been doing maybe a couple of sessions or three sessions, and the work is phenomenal. It's absolutely beautiful. Sarah Jennings is not going to join us tonight, but I mean today, but she she started the work a couple of weeks ago and very loosely with charcoal. And oops, okay, here we go. Never mind something. Yeah, with charcoal, but um, hold on. Let me just close some windows because this is and there's barely any paint on it. I'm gonna post it. I think I have it. I'll post it as an example because it is just so beautiful, and it is because of the subject. And so at the beginning of the month, we sent an email explaining why we're doing this, and it's working in the sense that it's just bringing this idea of um, having the possibility to escape reality, which is why we're painting more this year for several reasons, but also it ties up with climate change. It ties up with the loss of our environments. I don't know. It's just like a really beautiful way to approach it. And I'll talk about some of the premises that this artist used when they created these landscapes. These pastoral landscapes they did not exist as the paintings feature them. They were created as well as a form of escapism, not only during the process, but especially whoever commissioned these paintings or ended up purchasing these paintings. They wanted to have that experience for themselves where they lived. So it's a magical, imaginary, non existent landscape that had the same purpose back then as it has right now when we paint it. So this is my image reference, and the link there is several photos, and it's easy to just. I noticed that a couple of people already chose two of them. You don't have to choose those images. Very rarely we do this, like images from the book, but I just wanted to mention that this is the reference book that I found before Christmas, actually. And we were just thinking about intentions for 2025, and we were reading some people that um, are anticipating trends, and one of those people was this person. She's amazing. She's been doing this for many years, and then she created, or one of the intentions was to create bliss. She used the word bliss, and then in explaining that idea, um, the word delight also came up. So she was saying that people will try to enjoy in 2025 as many brief temporary moments of joy and delight and bliss as possible, more than ever before. And then after reading that and doing some writing on the for the emails, I saw this word delight on this catalog, and I'm like, this is perfect synchronicity, and yeah, so that's why we're doing this. So if you have your reference and you start doing this, and you're using charcoal, or regardless of whatever material, I know that some people are going to use different medium, but just know that we treat landscapes. Um, the analogy that we put is landscape as if you were designing the stage of an opera, an old school opera that has the curtains, and you create the idea of depth and perspective by looking at all the lines. Okay, good. Thanks, Claire. Looking at all the lines or all the curtains that create the illusion of space. And yeah, that's beautiful, Claire. This is one example. She put it on the chat, and it's a small painting, but the results are fantastic. Yeah, and there's a lot to learn from this. That it's not just leaves and trees and everything. Um, Also, the color palette, it's so strange and weird. Trees don't have this color. There's a lot of ochre because the pigments at the time, they were based on inorganic pigments, so they were from minerals. So essentially, over the centuries, the painting, oil painting doesn't fade. Certain colors do, but it pretty much retains the pigmentation. But anyhow, so I'm going back to this idea of designing a stage, and specifically because one of the particular aspects of these paintings is that they capture a wide, almost panoramic view. Um, and this is something that it doesn't come across first when you look at them. If you try to take a photo with a smartphone, I doubt that you'd be able to capture such a wide span, such a panoramic view. So the paintings were constructed or composed in a very operatic way. Um, so there are elements that are closer to us, there are elements that are layered behind, and then there are trees or foliage, there's architecture, there's sky, but everything follows like a line. They're all on a line, or on cue, I guess. Or so the first thing before you get overwhelmed with the details on the leaves, just recognize where would you put those curtains. Don't even think about what objects you're going to put in. Some people, by the way, remove the figures because the landscape in itself it's so rich that we don't need to add the figures. And if you notice my first session, it's very abstract, so nothing is contained. So I did not try to capture each specific shape, and then fill in inside the lines. I don't think for this it worked for me. There's too much, and there's also something that comes to play. So every one of these paintings has a different um, format and a different orientation. This painting, the format is a rectangle, and the orientation is portrait. Um, if you look at the chat, um, Claire posted the image reference. It's a painting that the format is an oval, or sort of like a rounded oval, or a rectangular oval shape, and then the orientation is landscape. So because of that, and because of the size on the book, we have to retrofit whatever happens here on our format. We're using a different proportion for our format. So you'll find that perhaps there are certain rocks or trees or architecture that you'll have to shift and move. So my advice would be to start something maybe like point of view that it's close to you. If there is something or something on the ground first, start with either a rock, or I'm going to kind of like do something here as an idea of a sketch. A rock or something that grounds the landscape. And again, potato shapes and really broad elements. So, and then from that, you could maybe start building some of the elements that come behind. Um, some of the things that I love about these landscapes is that the foliage itself, it's positioned in a way that it's cropped, and it creates this idea of the painting continuing outside of the format. So that's also another idea to kind of like capture as well. So in my case, I love the fact that this tree on the right is cropped on this area, and this other tree is cropped on this other area. So I try to kind of like set up my stage, by looking at how can I organize the different elements that I see. So rather than looking at, okay, there's a rock, I need to put the cracks on the rock and the grass underneath, and I was looking at the succession of curtains that create the illusion of stage. Um, because at some point you'll have to move and shift some of the elements, um, depending on your format. If you don't do that, then you're just going to have maybe too much like space, or it's going to look like too off frame. So start slow, just create a sketch of what the stage of this landscape would look like on your format, considering that you'll have to retrofit it. It's not going to be the same height and width. Um, uh, so, for example, with the example of Claire, I'm glad you brought this images, Claire. So, obviously, she filled out some of the elements that don't exist on the painting, and there's a different proportion. It looks really good on the screen, Claire, by the way. Good job. I know you're very happy about this. And surprised, I noticed that also there is an element of surprise as well of how good this can look actually, because it feels pretty intimidating. Um, Anyhow, so this would be my first approach to landscapes, because usually what we do with landscape, we don't do it this way. We start with point A, and then we start growing whatever it is. If it's a tree, then we start doing whatever's next to the tree, and then we do the picnic table, and then we do the barbecue, and then we do the sun. But we just follow from one point and we expand, and what ends up happening, which is beautiful, but it's a different painting, is that we squeezed all the planes into one, and it looks like a one flat. I'm going to use the word illustration, which I shouldn't, because um, I need to learn not to give the connotation of something that is not ideal. But maybe just like more graphic in the sense of a sign. Uh, yeah, more like a signage. Yeah, I think that's something I could use instead of illustration, because there's always that connotation. So yeah. So once you have this, know that with charcoal, you can wipe it off and you can redo it. You can spend the entire session just with charcoal. You can also um, not paint if you like, and just or paint on something else. And I will say this also, since we're here, that we haven't launched it yet. I wanted to do it formally, but we have approached people individually, and we have asked people to upload their paintings on our gallery. And um, I think next week we'll make the formal announcement with an email, but we restructure many things in our website, and our gallery has always been one of the most important parts, because the simple reason that typical academies and art school never sell their paintings online. And we all feel like, as a community, it's important to use the platform to promote our work, whether it's by making it more visible or by actually being people being able to purchase work. And we have sold work in the past from the gallery, and people look at the gallery and see what the work looks like. So we have created a new gallery system on our website, and I'm just gonna quickly type it really quickly. That it's super easy, and we have put the first paintings. It's an easy. So yeah, and I just noticed already we always track the visitors, the number of people that take a look, how much time they spend, which pages do they click on, and now that we have some work there, people are um, looking at the work in the gallery. So I don't know how this conversation started, but yeah, we just wanted to share with you that. Oh, yes, I know where it started. You can work on anything, obviously. I know that some of you are working on commissions, or on submissions, open calls, deadlines, or some other thing. But just know that this month, if you complete work on this series, we will upload it on our gallery and we'll promote it on our newsletter. Um, and also, if you are joining now and you haven't done the painting, hands painting, painting, you can do it also and upload it. And by the way, you don't have to create like a formal 9 by 12 painting. You can create a small sketch or a small study or an oil study or whatever you work on, because um, we want to make the work uh, on the gallery affordable and accessible. So even if you do something and you're like, I'm not going to sell this because I love it so much, or I'm going to give this to someone that I love dearly or that I owe something to, keep it. But you can make a smaller, more simple version and upload it. Anyhow, so yeah, and I haven't. I intend to put the figures later, but for now, I am not doing the figures, but it just, I haven't read the catalog. The articles and the essays inside look amazing, but the idea, they cover like several periods from pre-Renaissance to Renaissance, Rococo, even modern pastoral landscape. So once you have those first initial curtain designs, you can go back and add a few more things. But I wouldn't just go full drawing with this. There's something about it that feels very general and abstract. So yeah, this would be my sketch right here. There's an opening here. Oops. Remember, just always flicker your eyes back and forth. Don't spend too much time looking at your drawing. Your mind's going to start messing with it. Um, Look at your drawing as a source of um, information. And yeah, let me just see if anyone has texted or you know, to make sure. No. All right. And then after you have your first spaghetti lines, your first potato shapes, and you decided which ones stuck on the wall, then you can do a bit of shading if you like. It's always a good idea. The light in these landscapes tends to be all over the place, um, just because they took such a long time. They didn't do this outside. They did sketches outside, but then they worked on this in the studio, and then the light may not, like for example on this you cannot see it because it's too, but there's sunlight that creates a shadow on the water, but then this structure right here has shadow on the side of it. So um, there is on this figure there is light going this way because I see the calf illuminated. But this one it's more like zenithal light maybe, so it has a different purpose. So one of the things that makes this so whimsical and so beautiful is the fact that there's not a natural light direction. The artist who painted this had the intention to illuminate each of the areas of the landscape based on their own prerogative. And it creates a very theatrical um, effect, which makes this really beautiful paintings. Yeah, anyhow, so architecture on the back, and then some foliage. Don't rush to colors yet. Oops, this goes on on the upper part. Make changes, shift things around, distort, exaggerate. The idea of scale is also very important here. So look at how repetitive motifs in the painting are represented equally but with different scale. It'll give you a hint of how to create the illusion of space. In my case, for example, I have large trees right here, and then I have the same kind of tree but smaller right in the back. So take a look at the work, take a look at your painting, and see if you can spot um, the same subjects in the paintings but recreated with different scale, because that could be a good idea to lean on to. Don't worry about style. It's okay if this doesn't look like this or that, or if it's recognizable, or if the tree looks like whatever. It's specifically with these paintings, I think the purpose it's not naturalism, but more the idea of an imaginary landscape, which gives us, as challenging as this is, it gives us so much freedom to make artistic choices. So, um, yeah, this would be sort of like my potato shaped spaghetti stage. I like the word spaghetti actually for this stage. Maybe we'll incorporate it, Jen, to our vernacular spaghetti lines. Sounds good. throw
I
them.
know all the food things that you're saying. I'm like, well, shoot, I'm getting hungry. Potatoes, spaghetti. It's a carb fest.
Yeah, it's the carb stage.
Carb stage. Perfect.
Uh,
We'll get to the meat later. The meat and
the meat
potatoes.
and potatoes, it's inevitable. I give up.
Oh no.
It's nothing more explanatory and visual, I guess, right? I'm fine with it. So yeah, so I think start building and some of these blocks. So think already, if you notice, it has the idea slightly. Um, a, a bit abstract, obviously, because but it has the idea of a space, and that's what we want. One of the things about painting is to let go of pushing something forward. Uh, paint we paint for ourselves. So if it looks good to ourselves and to our eyes, um, we should just let it go. Um, so many times I feel like I want to push forward just because of this idea of presenting your work as best as you can. Imagine like you're getting ready to go to a dinner party. Of course, you want to wear the best outfit and style it correctly. And I don't know, there's something about that effort in presenting yourself. A painting is no different. Um, when we create it, there's this idea of putting things together, but we are styling it as we go. Sometimes elegance comes uh, with less. Um, so it just depends on how you approach it. But um, yeah, we on paintings we tend just because we can, we tend to add and stuff the sausage. Here comes the meat a bit more. So don't stuff the sausage. And sort of like do something simple that has an illusion or an essence of that. You know, we're doing paintings. Paintings are supposed to be interpretations, aspirations of something, aspirations of something. Paintings are not, they don't, they're not supposed to be literal, transactional things that, you know, have to have value in realism. Um, Actually, let me see if I can, because I don't know if it's going to be online, but I want to share as you create the sketch, and this could be a good time now to move it forward and do the wash, the staining, the imprimatura. All three words meaning that to transition from dry to wet. If you use oil, just a bit of like the solvent and a bit of the neutrals, and start doing like darker to lighter. If you use any other medium, so dilute it or process it, and then start as well. Well, with watercolor, I don't know if I would do that from darker to lighter, but maybe we'll consult with a watercolor expert at the end of the session who is in attendance. Um, but yeah, follow an order, a scale. An oil, darker to lighter works, and don't worry about matching any colors. And then just create color fields. So just color fields, color blocks. I started doing some detail, but the idea is to complete my imprimatura is not even finished because I have some spaces that I haven't done. So maybe I'll just do that. But in the meantime, as you transition from charcoal and value to the first layer, which is complete everything with a layer of transparency, I mean transparency, a layer of a wash, something that is transparent. I am going to see if I can find the images um, because I want to show you. I went to an art show yesterday that was so beautiful. It was the last day and I didn't want to miss it. Um, No, it's not here, but I am going to switch this. No, I'll do it later. It's okay. It's a contemporary painter, and I will just find it online, and then because he did some interiors and some landscape, very classical painting, but he has a peculiar approach and style and signature um, that um, makes him recognizable. And that is that he starts with a black canvas. Um, let me see if I can find his name. Let's do this. Reggie Barrows, Reggie Barrows Hodges, and exhibitions. He had a work there of small paintings, and I'm gonna put the link, and then I'll put one of the photos. I don't know. I had a favorite there because it works. And you'll notice it's just so ruthless painters, you guys. It's like so ridiculously amazing. And this is one of the most important galleries in LA. And it's so inspiring to see someone who gets it and a gallery who supports this. Oh, I have the painting. Let me see. Okay, so, okay, yeah, I got it. So this is the painting. And so it's a small painting. It's 15 by 21. And yeah, so so his style in this series was to always a black canvas. It's his thing. It's a black canvas, and what he doesn't paint all the way to the edge of the canvas. So he creates a painting with within the canvas. It doesn't reach the edge, and that edge is totally raw and random, and it's just so poetic and so simple, and everything feels like you can probably in your computer or a screen you can double click and you can see the painting in a larger screen. But I love this because it reminded me of the pastoral landscapes. It's Venice, by the way, and the title of the painting is Water Taxi Venice. um, it's just anyhow, I just wanted to give an example of an expectation, an example of what can we do with this, because we look at this and we feel intimidated, and obviously there is so much magic in this um, concoction, uh, but this is as beautiful and poetic. Anyhow, so I'm just gonna, once you have the imprimatura, then you can go back and with the oil and then repeat what you've done, but being a bit more specific with edge work. I would concentrate the work on things that are darker and with a hard edge, and then yeah, I would start building, and I am just essentially I'm just gonna keep my instruction there in regards to the initial stage, uh, charcoal, shading with charcoal, a wash, darker to lighter, cover everything. I'm gonna finish my wash actually. I think this would be appropriate. And after that, go back to the darker to lighter and then be more specific. And the key to all this is not to spend time on one section, not spend too much time on one single section. So catch yourself um, working too much on one thing, and peel your brush away from it, because We say so. No. Because when you spend so much time in one spot of the painting, what you're causing indirectly is the rest of the painting sort of like drifts away. And then it takes a lot of energy and concentration and mental power to work on a painting. And if you dedicate it in one spot, your brain will not be as fresh and as ready to continue the painting. You'll feel tired and exhausted. And then when you tackle other parts of the painting and you go in with that less level of stamina, you won't be able to achieve what you achieved in the first level of painting, and then you'll feel psychologically defeated. And the best way to solve this and the most efficient way to approach it is not to put all your money in one basket or all your eggs, sausage, eggs, spaghetti, potato, I'm counting, in one basket. Just do a little bit of work in one place and be confident enough to leave it underdeveloped and go somewhere else. You'll be able to revisit as many times as you'd like. Don't spend too much time in one spot, would be possibly the most important um, advice, lesson, instruction ever. Just spread your effort equally in several parts of the painting. It's going to build. It's going to, once you put the painting in motion, it doesn't stop. It's in motion. The only way to stop that is you leaving. But it just continues to evolve. So you don't want to drain all your mental power in one single tiny little bridge or thigh or drape fabric. At least I should be impartial and more objective. At least that's for me. I have a hard time spending too much time in one spot, and that is not, I would say, the norm. I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, the norm, right? I'm probably the exception because the norm is that some artists are very disciplined and they're able to commit to a single spot in the painting until that thing is just like a Marie Antoinette cake, just perfect and completely beautiful. But that's not me. And also, I think that's not what we recommend either because we have such limited time. Sometimes we see people just once and that's it. We cannot do that. So, because of the constrictions of our way of painting, and also because of my personal approach, I just can't do one thing and then spend like 5 hours. But some people do, yeah. Um, Reggie Burroughs certainly doesn't. These are, um, I don't know if this was sketched. I haven't read the um, essay that accompanies the exhibition, but it'd be interesting to see if these were like field studies done with sketch work. He uses pastel, so maybe he used pastel for this and then he used acrylic to complete them. These are acrylic paintings, by the way, and it's acrylic and chalk pastel on linen. Uh, you can appreciate on a photograph, but we always talk about the distinction between linen and cotton. All these paintings, by the way, some of them were on wood panel, some of them were on linen. Cotton is kind of like more of a recent development. The thread on linen is so minute that it creates a quasi flat surface. I was looking at the surface of the canvas from the side, and there were barely any threads showing, which is so wonderful when you paint. It's so rough. It's like 4x4 wheel driving. When you use a canvas that it's cotton and it only has like one gesso or prime layer, it's painting like on sandpaper. It's rough. Uh, I I'm fine with it, but um, I don't recommend it, and we shouldn't normalize it. Michaels has the store has these amazing sales of canvases, and I know so many artists that buy canvases on Michaels because it's just really amazing. Uh, when they do the sale, you can get like tons of canvases for the price of just a few. But I know that they prime those canvases many times over because that rough surface is really difficult to paint on, difficult to photograph. Um, so I'm using a paper this time. I'm not using a hard surface. And one of the uh, papers that we use uh, to make it look like a painting, they do a press on top of the paper, so it has a little bit of texture, and that press on is to replicate the idea of linen. So if you're working on something that you started with us and you have that paper with you and you haven't painted over yet, or you can look at the back, it's probably even a bit too rough, but this is what those paintings look like. Really very sophisticated, very flat, and it's a delight to paint on top of it, and it doesn't create the moire effect. Anyhow, I'm getting too uh, far from this. All right, a little bit. Oh, and I need to. So I've been experimenting with my palette, and it's been really challenging. Um, I'm only using four colors. I think for this is really wonderful. Um, so titanium white, and um, I'm gonna use an old palette because it's the same colors. I'm using Prussian blue. This is a color that it's testing me. It's testing me because it's very hard to paint with this color. Burnt sienna and yellow ochre. So I just simplified everything with these colors. I there's something nice about that. We talked about it a few times. And so yeah, that's my palette. I have a solvent and I have the oil. So I'm just gonna go ahead. Let's see if I can just create a much closer. Yeah, I think that's okay. Sorry for the shaking. But I am going to complete. Why is it difficult? The Prussian blue, even though it's an inorganic color, it has an extreme tinting um, capacity. So it dominates. So I really have to work. It's not that it's impossible. It just requires much more work to. I'm gonna use the word tame, although I don't like that word. But yeah, it's okay. It's like having an orchestra and the instrument of the big drums. Those kind of like I don't know what they're called. The big cauldron-like drums. Imagine that's Prussian blue, and imagine that person just going off with the drums. And you are the conductor of that. Yeah, I think that could be a good analogy for color palette. Um, I am doing this, and my eyes are on that drummer, and I'm like, dude, you better tone it down because you are too loud. But with each painting, I'm getting a little bit more acclimated. So I'm still sticking with it, and I will not give up yet. And I will report on my progress. But yeah, I'm just gonna paint this right now. And as you notice, I'm just not following any lines. I'm not painting within the lines for this. And I'm just finishing my imprimatura. Um, yeah, I was gonna do the dude over here, but I am gonna cover the dude and I'll do it later. Yeah, anyhow, so I'm still sticking with the Prussian blue. I think it's a really phenomenal color. And for this, the Prussian blue and the ochre, it's such a rewarding green for landscape painting. It's just so beautiful. The Prussian blue, it's really strong, but then the yellow ochre tempers it. Yeah, I'm just gonna do the whole thing, and then also right up here. Because what matters here, it's not so much that we match the line and the shape, I mean, and the tone. What matters is that we have we have a wet surface. That's what matters. We have a wet surface. So my challenge with this painting yesterday was my official first day, I would say. Was it? Yeah. And Jackie joined us, which she is an amazing painter, and she accomplished so much. And I just feel like with this painting, um, because there's so many elements, it's just taking me forever. Oh, and by the way,
Just wanna hop in real quick and just say, it was actually Tuesday. We did not meet yesterday. I don't want
oh,
anyone on this call to worry that they missed a session yesterday.
that's right. That's right. Thanks, babe. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is my um I yeah, generally I don't use white on imprimatura because I have the paper, and then if I want to do something lighter, I just put more um I put more solvent, and then I just yeah I don't put any paint. Yeah, yesterday, by the way, was bonkers. I'm glad we didn't do this session because that was just. I hope you guys are okay. My neighbor's tree, one of the she has like very old oak trees right above her, and one of the branches split and collapsed. Luckily, not on her roof, but so yeah, uh, I'm pretty sure that there's been some damage in the city because of that mega. It's so heartbreaking um, to see rain these days, just because I always think this could have come a bit earlier. It just yeah, but that was amazing. So yeah, we stayed home. I love it. I think it's beautiful. Okay, so I think I'm done with my um, wash or staining, whatever you want to call it. Uh, yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Okay. So I am in perfect timing as well. Yeah, a little bit before the first hour. It's good to start working on first color notes. And the idea is this is the most intensive and longest part of the process in which we start applying a little bit of oil and paint and then go one section at a time from darker to lighter to polish, define. Um, the more we do this, the more we realize that there's a lot of drawing involved in this. So use a medium or a small brush and at will pick one of the areas that you want to work on and just with a bit of oil and a bit of paint, just reinforce it, clarify it, um, make it more present, more specific, and at the same time have the freedom to alter it, change it, modify it. Um, because it's important that every time we get to revisit something, we reassess if we are okay with it. Because most of the time when we paint, we feel like if it has enough paint and we've done enough details, that means that it's done. And it's a bit deceiving because that's not what makes an area complete or done. It's more if it integrates with the rest of the painting. It's more if we modify it. It's like a draft and you go over a million times, and every time you go over, you change a word, you change the structure, you change something about it, and then after many drafts, in the end, then you're like, it may not be still perfect, but you have gone so far long from the first initial draft that you feel like that's been simmered, and maybe you go back a week later and then you're like, gosh, this sounds awful, and then you rework it again. But so much of this has to do with time and revisiting. So a painting is no different. Revisit, revisit, revisit. Even with Claire, I remember that when you on Tuesday when we painted, you went over, and even the previous week, I remember. Oh no, no! Oh my gosh, Claire, you were not there on Tuesday. Forget. Check me in. I'm done. Last week, Tuesday and Thursday, you revisited this like a few times, and every time there was something that you welcomed. Something came in that um, build on what you had. So yeah, revisiting very important. I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna work on this tree just because I feel like I have this bridge kind of like anchoring. I realize that the river now is sort of like uh, uh, sinuously curving. So I think this is really beautiful. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna use a smaller brush, medium or small. So this is the range of my brushes, by the way, that I use. I have too many, but um, so sometimes I use this too when I need like more aggressive or expressive brushstroke, and then I may use this if I need more like polished. There's no particular reason why one is longer, the other ones are shorter. It's just I don't know. I think I just bought the long one and then, but yeah. So these are the combinations that I use. So maybe because I have everything blocked, I may use like the small one, and then I'm gonna start with the tree, and then the way I do it when I revisit. So I kind of like slow down and I say, okay, I recognize the area that I'm gonna be working on, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to create a green for that area. So then I spend a couple of minutes maybe, and then I create a sample color for that specific area. And then, I use sort of like a combination of intuition and my two main criteria that we talked about it: cold, warm, hot, I mean, I'm sorry, cold, yeah, warm and cold, dark and light. Yes. So if when I make a color, I have the color in my mind that I want to match, and then these two elements or criteria or two principles, or rather four. If it's too cold, I add warm tones. If it's too warm, I add cold tones, and then also darker and lighter. If it's getting too dark, I try to incorporate maybe not white yet, but I try to incorporate any light color that I could apply there to lift the value of that paint. So warm and cold, dark and light are my two main criteria when I make a color. I don't base my color formulation on memory or a script, or and I don't know of any artist classically trained who does, because the reality is that to go from point A, which is the raw color, to point B, which is the color that you want to create, there are many ways to achieve that. It's amazing how it's never a mathematic, it's like alchemy. It's never a mathematic single formula. You could create flesh tone, and I've seen create flesh tone with the most incredible colors. And everyone, every book, every manual, I love to collect vintage um, painting manuals, and every single one of them has a different way to create flesh tones. And that was a revelation for us, because the truth is that you can do it in many ways. And that's why it's better to base the color mixing and making on principle or criteria rather than formula. So if you have the color that it's approximate to the color that you're trying to match, you could start with that and then process it. Maybe just add some opposite temperature to pull it back, maybe just making darker with a dark tone. But the idea that I think it worked best for us has always been uh, cold, warm, dark, light. So once I have that little sample, then if I work on an image, and some artists, majority of artists work from photographs that I know of, contemporary artists that do realism, and you could test your sample right next to it. And this is a gorgeous green, but maybe for this right here, yeah, for the bottom could work. I feel like it's too colorful. So how do you pull back a color without getting rid of it? Meaning, how do you get a green that it's not as green, but it's still green? And I think that's also a very, I wouldn't say it's a difficult color theory principle, but it's definitely uh, uh, medium difficulty. You can change the identity or the saturation of the color by adding the opposite in temperature. So I had this green, it's a bit too green here, so I'm going to pull it back by adding some of the burnt sienna. And voila, this is a magnificent. Maybe if I add a tiny bit of the Prussian blue could even be better. Yeah, I think that's gorgeous. So what I'm doing is kind of like doing color samples and playing with it. Here's the thing though. Do I do this when we are on the field or painting outside? I don't spend as much time because I'm working much faster. But if I have time, if I'm like this, like more prepared or with more time, or with more energy, then I can do this and really get the colors that I want. So it will always elevate your work, because the further away we are from the color of the tube, the more beautiful the painting is going to be. And I'm using the word beautiful here purposely. Once I have that color, I notice that there are variations. I can slightly change the variations of the color as I go forward. maybe adding a little bit more yellow ochre, perhaps even adding a tad of white. Okay, here we go. Um, if you want the color to stay on the surface, don't put too much pressure on it. This will never be able to. I always have a beef. Okay, add it to the list. Um, with digital painting because I recognize that it's amazing because it allows people to have access to creating. And for that alone, it's incredible. And I was going to mention, gosh, the iPad guy. Jesus, my brain today. It's going to come up. Um, okay, so, but one of the things that you cannot do, they try to replicate it, it kind of works a little bit. With digital painting, you can, depending on how much pressure you put on the screen, you're going to get more density or less. But one of the things that doesn't happen is the resistance of the surface of the painting against the brush. You don't get that with digital painting. Don't get that with digital painting. And also the fact that the layers that you put are wet underneath, not in digital painting. Sorry, digital painting, but no. I'm trying to build a bit of like the bone structure of the foliage. And that's always a good idea when you paint foliage. Try to identify, instead of like doing the crown of the canopy or the edges, the way I did it when I was a kid, that was how I built a bridge. I mean, a tree, just the tree trunk, and then um, just doing the edge of the canopy. Just you need to support the foliage. Support the foliage with whatever architectural, natural architectural element you can find. And in this case, is this trunk for me. Okay, it's working and it's perfect. And again, I could spend 10 minutes working on this, but I'm just going to move away. And since I'm talking about structural, I'm just going to do this right here because I think it's beautiful. There's a bit of a tiny branch. We talked about trees, and I want to show you a photo of another painting catalog that I had to purchase. I had to purchase. There's um, there's some painters that at some point you get fatigued. Um, okay, let me just continue with this before I say something. But you have seen it, Jen, um, on Tuesday. Okay, I'm just doing a bit of that foliage right here. And more than the foliage, because I want to bring the texture maybe later. I just want to create, yeah, the idea of something irregular, something unpredictable. And I'll have to create that idea, I have to force it. So, uh, trembling pulse, shorter brush strokes. So yeah, that's the idea. So we change. So instead of like doing like more dragging the paint longer, we want to create this accidental um, irregular edge. I'm just going to do that from the other side. So sometimes that means that's the most difficult part of the process. Okay, so another thing, if you're like moving forward, I will tell you the things that have come up for us in the few sessions that we've done. And yeah, especially with Claire's process because she's more ahead. Um, so notice that these paintings, they almost feel like chiaroscuro. Chiaroscuro became famous because it was a really uh, dramatic way of painting and religious painting, I would say, in many during many centuries. Um, and the paintings have a lot of darkness. These paintings, some of the areas are very dark, but there's a way that they build depth, and that is creating a very light, almost pastel um, distinction with the background. And you can see it on the chat with Claire's painting. Uh, you see the image reference, but quite a few times she uplifted the values on the background and created more of a luminous effect. So have that in mind, and not only have it in mind, but prioritize it because the changes in light on these landscapes are dramatic. Um, Usually, when we are in front of a landscape, our eye and our mind perceives color. Light escapes us a bit, unless there's a specific, situation. Maybe we are under a canopy of a tree or something like that. But it's usually this idea of different colors that hit our eye. Um, but light is very important in regards to creating depth, and especially in these landscapes, one after the other. One of the things that I absolutely love that it's so weird, and I never paid attention until we were doing this, until we started this, is how dark some of the spots are, um, and how bright and luminous and pastel things in the distance are. So if you see it, if it happens on your painting reference, exaggerate it and uh, revisit or rescan again your image and see what areas are super lit, and then um, recreate that on the painting. In fact, that's something that I need to do with the billowy clouds. I need to make the edges a bit lighter. Um, but yeah, it's just. Oh, and I said this. Yeah, I said this because sometimes what I have to do, or what we'll have to do, is work the irregular edges of our trees or elements or rocks by actually creating also irregular edges on the other side. So you'll have to combine painting on the actual focal point and painting on the negative space to create this idea. And that's something that it's beautiful on, as an example, on Claire's painting, because some of the density of the foliage as it departs from the trunk of the tree becomes more transparent and less heavy. Um, but it had to be an exercise of painting that not only from the actual edge of the leaves, but also from the background. I'm gonna try to do it right there. And yeah, we just gonna continue. Time wise, we're good. So, but I'll stop the recording in half an hour or less, um, in 20 minutes actually. So I'm gonna do this as an example. Oh, and by the way, also, I mean, some people do it. I have a hard time. I never do it, but I've seen some people do this with foliage. Sometimes what people do is um, they put a little bit of paint on the brush. Okay, um, you hold the brush differently from the end. You lay it almost as if it was flat on the surface, and then you roll. Look, my thumb and index. You roll that, and that's gonna, instead of like dragging the paint, it's gonna create a stamping of the bristles. Actually, it's working really well, I have to say. It's working really well. Whatever trick, tool, first of all, never share it. This is like a magician's uh, doctrine. Don't tell anyone, never share it, meaning if you're explaining your painting to someone, you never tell them how you did it. That's it. End of story. Um, but my second point is that you don't overuse it because if you find that something works, then you're gonna be like, oh, I can do this. Great. I'm just gonna roll that brush until there's no tomorrow. You have to you have to be measured, and combine that. Actually, this is working pretty well. What am I talking about? I'm gonna roll this. I'm gonna roll this. I'm on a roll. Rolling. Okay.
Also, food.
Oh, that's right. You good.
I think I'm just hungry.
Oh man, yeah. By the end, I'm always starving. So it is. Thanks, Jen. That's a long list. That's really working, actually. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to approach this. Look at this. It's actually quite interesting. All right, so here's another technique. It's so hard to for the foliage to paint it sometimes. All right, so I'm gonna try to work on the other side. And so here's the thing, I barely put any pressure and I try not to get rid of that feathery edge. It's nothing makes it look more sort of like predictable again than when you lose that sense of randomness. I think that's very important, especially on a landscape. Our enemy, I hate to put it like in the sense of like being on a war because I never like this, but I'm gonna do it. Our enemy is predictability. Anything in nature, nothing is structure. That's why is nature. Nature is natural. Okay, so the word in itself it explains it. So the more predictable our brushstroke is, or our transparency, or the scale of our brushstroke, the more we're gonna step away or veer away from natural. So it doesn't matter what kind of style you do this in. It doesn't matter if the figure looks like that's not important. It's hard to kind of like think this way because you have to really kind of like do a flip because what's important is criteria that make the painting more unstructured and unpredictable. So especially with foliage, apply this if you can. If you see an edge that it's way too hard edge, way too hard edge, uh, that means it doesn't mean like it's wrong. It means that we need to revisit it and do work on one side and the other side. Okay, and then I'm just gonna go on the other side of the tree. And because I feel like I want to paint this area a bit. Yeah, yeah, this is gonna be, oh, it's just gonna be beautiful. Yeah. And again, just that's why I feel like compared to the hands, this look, I was trying to roll the brush using the typical handle. It's not the same. I can't do it. I have to hold it. So let me see if I can explain. If I hold it like this and I roll it, it doesn't stamp because it's the side of the bristles that do the work. I have to hold it like this, like with my fist, and then roll it because the angle, look at the shadow of the brush and how um, it's not parallel, obviously, but it's really close. The angle is really tight. And then I can just use that and I roll with my thumb and my index finger. Because with this, it's just much more difficult. Okay, so I'm still on that tree and I need to make more paint. So I'm gonna do the same. Uh, I think I've said this before, but this is something that I had to apply specifically with my palette because of the virulent Prussian blue in regards of color. You always mix lighter colors first. So let's say you want to create a green. You never start with blue and then you add yellow. I mean, okay, the word never is very harsh. If you want to start green and you don't have it, you always start with the lighter color. So always start with yellow and then you add a little bit of the blue. Why? Um, when you have such a strong polarity of value as something as light as yellow and as dark as blue, again, it's not mathematic. If you put 50% of blue and 50% of yellow, it will not give you green. The blue takes so much dominance over the mixture that if you want to lighten up and make it more green, you'll have to put a ton more yellow. And I've been there and I've done it many times, especially with secondary colors, orange, green, and purple. Purple, forget it. With oil, it's a battle that's lost because it's so hard to make purple with our inorganic colors. You have to buy the organic purple, which we don't carry. But we carry other alternatives that are amazing. But orange and green, which are really, um, so if you want to make orange, you don't start with the red. You start with yellow, and then you can control how orange you want that mixture by slowly bringing in some red. Same with gray. That's why we have gray in our palette because we don't have to do it because it's another added work. But if you don't have gray and you want to do a gray tone, you don't start with black and then you add white to it. You always start with white and then you add a little bit of black to it. And I have to say this and stop because we have done it so many times that now it's instinctual. We don't do it. Our brain already kind of like knows. But it is such an important piece of information because I feel like we are not trained that way. And it's always like, first of all, we always get the colors we need. But the root of why we find mixing colors so difficult, it's not because it is. It's because we are not given the tools to understand it. So there's such fear about mixing colors because it seems such a secretive and completely esoteric world when it's not. It's so easy. Of course, easier said than done, but principles like this are more important than knowing your colors, that memorizing names, that knowing formulas, because to me it's about control. And control gives me the possibility of direction. If I can control, I can direct. And even though I want some unstructured elements, I still want to control that. I want to control the randomness in a way. Anyhow, so I just we're gonna work on. Oh yeah, I was just explaining the holding the brush. One of the things also that hopefully gets revealed as we do this is how many or how varied brushstrokes are, how many things we can do with them. Because we have a tendency of just using one gear, one speed, one angle, and one pressure. And it, all those things could vary tremendously. And you could, with every variation, you get a different brushstroke. And especially with something like this, that it's not a single object, that it's an open space, you want to create the idea of a big area that you're covering. This is why landscapes could be so challenging, because you cannot get away with that single approach, meaning like one single gear, length, pressure. No, it doesn't work, because if you do it, it's just, again, it's going to flatten. You may use a very pixelated brushstroke here. You may drag the paint with the clouds. You may use a much more structured brushstroke with architectural elements. Everything will have a different approach in regards to that's why, even though landscapes are supposedly simpler, I find landscapes more challenging than portraits, because there's more of uh, um an expectation of likeness in regards to the space looking natural. So yeah, yeah, that's why it's a challenging subject. Um, and I love that it's challenging me. I love that it's challenging me. Yeah. Every time you make a color, it's going to be different, but that's not something to be frustrated about. It's something to celebrate, because you don't want to have anything. Again, I'm just testing. This is a bit too, I could use a bit of white here. Always test your color. And if the rolling doesn't good, or if it looks too repetitive, then you can just do a trembling brushstroke and maybe just featherly apply the paint on top of it. Um, Once you have like a little bit of a trick to create the effect, apply it. Don't over use it, but always step back. Always step back and see what kind of illusion you get. If it's too strokey, if it's too heavy, if it's too pattern like, it doesn't mean like you've done anything wrong. It means you need to work on it a bit further. So I always, this is more metaphysical, but I always reframe the idea of right or wrong, because it doesn't work with the creative process. It doesn't work. If it doesn't create the effect that you expect, it's telling you that it needs more work. It doesn't tell you anything else. And maybe if I had to redefine right um, today with this process, I would say if you feel like you don't need to revisit it again, then I would check. If you check it off, then I wouldn't call it right, but then I would just, the development is complete. It's just I love all this language stuff, obviously, because I feel like words are uh, objects. Like someone saying, when you say you're done, I'm done. It's a very strong statement. So this needs a bit more lightness. So maybe just, you know, saying that something's complete has more of the right vibration. I'm going completely off with this stuff. Yeah, this may need, it may need more work this week. We're gonna work on this. I'm gonna work on this the rest of the month for the next 2 weeks. But definitely, I'm gonna leave it here. Is it complete? No. Is it wrong? No. Does it need more work? Yes. All right. So I haven't used right or wrong, but I know that I need to peel myself from it because I have a ton of stuff to do in other places. Um, so yeah, let me see what else. I know that I worked on this area right here, but I'm gonna work on the area that I feel like needs the most. Sometimes I go by what is that confronts me the most. So I'm gonna go down here because it's super dark. Yeah, here we go. And I'm going to do the rock. So as you notice, I haven't added any extra stage after um, the charcoal and the wash and everything like that. Okay, so in about like 5 minutes, I'm gonna stop the recording and then we can open. We're gonna open the microphones and um, cameras optionally, obviously. So always you always control this, and then if you want to share anything, work in progress, if you want any feedback or if you have any questions, um, we'll just use it for that, and that will not be recorded. So just wanted to give a little preview of the last half an hour. Totally optional. And also, you don't have to, if you need to go or leave, you don't have to follow any formality. You can just drop. Um, yeah, this needs to be out of the call. And again, super optional. You don't have to show anything. Oh, yeah, this is really good. I noticed that um, some of course, I'm using a limited palette and I understand and I know that my color will not be exactly the same. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is good. This is good. Um, Going back to the email that we sent at the beginning of the month, we also put in the email a photograph of a painting by Cecily Brown. She's a contemporary painter, and she recreated that famous impressionist painting of the lunch over on the grass. Very important to, again, I just want to provide myself with references that it's not like I'm lowering the bar. It's just it's good to have realistic expectations and see what other artists consider complete. Because our idea to something being complete could be so unrealistic that we're actually making it more detrimental to continue painting this way. So to me, it's always inspiring and it opens my mind and it opens the possibilities of doing something when I learn what it means to complete something um, from different artists. And that Cecily Brown painting, depending on which metric or criteria you use, it could be a hideous painting or a complete knockout. And well, and she sold it. So and it was showing at the Met Museum. So it was a complete knockout by that standard. Yeah, I'm having fun just I'm having fun escaping, and I think this applies also with painting. I'm having a lot of fun escaping and getting lost in this landscape. And I think that's one of the reasons why we propose this, just not only to create beautiful landscapes, idyllic landscapes where people frolic and they all look beautiful and healthy and they just have fun and leisure time, and but they feel also amazing painting them. Yeah, that's where I'm at. There's foliage here, but I love what's happening. This area is a little bit more developed, and this will change dramatically. But uh, again, it's once you turn this on, it just moves forward, doesn't stop. So I love enjoying the motion forward. I love enjoying the development, and I try. Yes, there are moments of frustration, and I have so much to do on this, and it's so far. We always kind of like feel this way, but at the same time, I always make sure that I dedicate some time to appreciate all the changes and how far the painting has traveled from the beginning, and how wonderful it feels, to get lost with these natural elements. It's a form of um, it's a form of hiking in a way. Okay, so the river. This is water. Oh man. Okay. Now, after day whatever, I realize that this is water. See, this is the thing about observing versus seeing, and how when you observe, you reveal the truth of something, but when you give it a glimpse, that could be so deceiving. And this is an example of that. There's a rock here. I have no idea. I love that the water is also kind of like greenish. I mean, of course, this is like uh, I scanned this from a book that was printed. Who knows what the color? And I love that, by the way. The real painting is probably so stunning. But I love the fact that I'm going to paint the water right there. I love the fact that there's so much process, that the color has been processed so much. Kind of like creates a sense of possibility when that happens. Possibility in the sense that we can decide what direction we want to take. We want to take that. So I embrace it. Okay, the water stops here and it goes around. How about that? How about that? I'm telling you, I love this subject so much, um, for the challenge, but the escapism just really feels wonderful to get lost in it. So, more important than what this ends up looking like, which I'm already happy about. And with the work of, yeah, Reggie Burroughs. Oh my gosh, I have a hard time remembering his name. Reggie Burroughs. I just yeah, I love his work. How pure it is. Pure in the sense of truthfulness, innocence, doesn't have to be pompous. It doesn't have to be complicated. He doesn't he Sometimes with work like this, what makes it beautiful is the confidence that transpires with the artist's brushstrokes. You know, precisely the fact that he painted it this way, like so, it's so rough and doesn't have proportions. It's all kind of like mangled and not really polished. And but it's precisely that confidence and innocence at the same time of saying no, this is enough. But to me, I find so, I don't know, inspiring. Yeah, it's really quite something. I always like this kind of work. All right, I'm painting a little bush right here. Yeah, and this will need another. So okay, never mind. Just look at the clock. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. This could go on forever because it's so amazing. And then I'll open the. Here we go.